It's a big day for Matter. The new electric motorbike startup has just launched Aera, its first product with a lot of promise. And I have with me Mr. Mohal Lalbhai, who's the CEO of Matter. Mohal, congratulations. I think
Thank
a day
you.
You've been waiting for.
Waiting for quite some time, yes.
Just looking at the spec and even the price, some pretty good value put in there. Just try to understand, how did you manage to achieve this level of cost? Is it fundamentally down to as much localization, indigenization and local development as possible?
So for us, the entire thought process started with three promises we want to make to the customer, which is the upfront price, the performance and the reliability. And when we looked at all of these and looked at how to go about solving what we saw as the largest problem, which is no real electric motorcycles there, we decided that vertical integration, and when I mean vertical integration, other than cells, magnets and semiconductors, things which we cannot get in India, everything is sourced from within India and then completely managed and designed by us. So there's literally just three things we do not control design of.
So even the motor components you assemble, you make the motors here fundamentally?
We've completely gone into the level of how many turns on the copper, how and what spec the motor has to be, the size, the positioning. I mean, we had to introduce the gearbox.
Right.
We wanted to introduce the gearbox. And even to do that, we had to go and redesign how the gearbox works, go and redesign the clutch, redesign literally, and we're just talking powertrain. Like I could go into the battery, talk about liquid cooling, you've seen the bike, so everything, the battery, the electronics, the powertrain has to be packaged in a volume which is just about the size of a carry-on piece of luggage.
Right.
So even to introduce liquid cooling into that was been about a 2 years worth of effort trying to really find ways to compress technologies which are typically available for four-wheelers into a two-wheeler package.
But, sticking with the cost, is also, let's say, reliance on outside suppliers, which a lot of people do. You have to do it for the cells. But clearly, you have in India, let's say, battery pack manufacturers as well. That was not an option. I mean, can you just give us a sense on what the cost benefit really is?
So, if you look at it, if you end up buying a motor from a motor manufacturer, somebody who has spent time and energy in designing the motor in the first place, you need to reimburse that cost. And typically, large companies end up taking these in an OPEX format. So, your cost of component goes up by almost 100%. That's where affordability and the promise we have to the consumers
falls apart there.
Just falls apart. When we talk about batteries, when you look at a battery, you don't look at the cells. It's the cells plus the way the cells are connected, the thermal management or the liquid cooling, and the BMS. All of these really need to stitch down together. And this in a standalone is no good. The battery needs to talk to the rest of the bike as well, because if everything is perfectly integrated is when you really are able to optimize on cost and on reliability.
Right. And tell me, but clearly one perhaps challenge by going into such deep localization and sourcing parts as locally as possible is, I'm sure your development time must have gone up.
It does.
Because clearly you can't just take something off the shelf like a motor. You're developing that yourself. So just give us a rundown as to what was the lead time, and that in a way is a cost as well.
It is. I think for us the journey is about 5 years and 9 months in, almost to the day. So
right.
Yeah, it's been a long road. We wish we would have been faster.
What's taken the most time? Is it just localizing the parts, testing them, validation?
2 years of testing and validation is something that we wanted to ensure we have before we even roll out. So, I mean, we could have started shipping out the bikes much earlier than today, but we just were not comfortable.
Right. And, interesting liquid cooling. Obviously, that could be seen as an edge because we are a high ambient country. So,
Definitely.
No need to compromise on the performance once the battery gets hot. And you have to kind of start shutting down things. What was the rationale on liquid cooling? Is it just that to operate in the highest possible ambient conditions?
Well, that's rational in hindsight.
Right.
So when we made the first prototype, it did not have liquid cooling on the battery, and I don't. My memory is not helping. But it was the third or the fourth day in of running the prototype, it refused to start up, and everyone went. I mean, everyone is trying to figure out what went wrong, why isn't it working? Because that's early day, first prototype, you're just trying to figure out, did you kind of miss putting in a wire in? We realized that it was parked in Ahmedabad heat out in the sun in summer. This is June 2020.
In a non-running condition.
In a non-running condition, just parked. And the test engineer came in and tried to drive, and it refused to start. And that's when we realized that the internal temperature of the battery was at about 56, 57 degrees Celsius. And all protections hit, it just said it's too hot to operate. You know, the same message you see on your phone sometimes when they kept on the dashboard.
Yeah.
Same message was seen, but not in a fancy UI. But the minute we realized this is something that happens to two-wheelers in the country all the time. You're not going to have covered parking.
Yeah.
You are going to be out and about. You're going to park wherever you have parking space available. And I mean, it's going to be 99 in 100 chances you're going to be out without cover.
Right.
Now, if you have to give a product to the consumer, it needs to operate when the consumer needs it to operate. Not at the whims and fancy of the product. It has to be at the whims and fancies of the consumer.
Right.
That's when we realized we need liquid cooling.
But just correct me. I mean, liquid cooling when the bike is parked, does it? I mean, is there?
It will trigger if it goes above 50 degrees.
On its own, even when the bike is stationary.
Sometimes you see cars still running the fans even when you switch them off.
Right.
Same approach. We want to protect the battery because battery today is the largest cost in the vehicle.
Right.
If I keep it cool, it runs when you want it to run. And the other benefit of keeping it cool is it runs. I mean, it lasts longer.
Right.
So, I mean, typically people talk about 3 years, some people talk about 5 years. We've seen our batteries being tested for far longer than that, and they perform quite well.
And again, on the charging side, from 5 amp to 15 amp, it's pretty straightforward. Just find a plug and you can plug in.
So, yeah, the idea was as simple as that a typical motorcycle rider will have a backpack, but that backpack is going to carry his essentials for the day, be it a laptop or be it work related stuff. He really does not get space to carry a brick of a charger.
Right.
So we said, okay, he can't carry a brick and he needs to be able to charge anywhere. Now, I personally don't believe in charging infrastructure for two-wheelers. No, not at the scale. It is necessary more from a redundancy perspective, that what if somebody gets stranded, but I don't see that being used as a primary mode of charging.
Right.
To allow for primary mode of charging, we said we'll make sure that there is one infrastructure in this country which is always available, which is a 5 amp socket.
Right.
You see it, I mean, tube lights are powered with it, your fans are,
it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere.
You charge your mobile phones, laptops. We wanted to ensure that from that socket itself, with the same simplicity of the way you charge your phones, right? You plug one into the wall and the other onto your phone. That is literally how we said we need to be able to charge. So today, how the Aera gets charged is you literally have a small socket which goes in and a connector which connects to the bike. There's no brick in between. We've put the brick inside the vehicle. We've taken care of all of that. And this cable now actually fits inside the glove compartment. So you can carry it with you. Your backpack still stays yours. You're no longer stuck.
Yeah. And you don't always have a backpack.
You necessarily don't always, but now you always will have a charging cable.
Exactly. You know, that's I think that's a pretty kind of clever way of designing the charging cable. But again, you know, I want to talk about some other very interesting feature of the bike. And to be honest, I don't know how much consumers will take to it is the gearbox. You know, you've got a 4-speed gearbox. I mean, do you need a gearbox for EVs? Normally, when you have an EV, you don't want the gears, but maybe, and let's not forget, this is more on the commuter segment, not so much in the high-end sporty segment. So just trying to think you're rational in that. I mean, was it, to be honest, just to be different, or do you really see customers getting value out of that?
So I'm going to answer this in a few different ways. Consumers typically have only seen motorcycles with a gearbox. Scooters come without, but motorcycles have always come with a gearbox. Now, to keep that familiarity is one core reason, but we wanted to dig deeper. Why are people preferring a gearbox in the first place? And it literally came down to road infrastructure. When you have flat, smooth roads, you're fine. When you have slightly rougher terrains, you want to be able to shift down and have more torque control.
Right.
So there's a very logical, rational thinking. From a business side, because we used mechanical amplification of torque through the gearbox, we were able to reduce the size of the motor significantly while still giving the same performance.
Right.
Now that I've reduced it, my electronics and my battery also come down, leading into a reduced cost to the consumer.
Right.
But the performance is still top notch. I mean, and these are all very rational explanations, but you've just ridden one.
Yeah.
I mean, you felt it.
Yeah,
the emotion is something I'll never be able to describe.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I quite enjoyed it. It was quite a, quite a different feeling, just shifting with a clutch and on an electric
that
motor.
smile on your face says a lot.
But I found another use for it is actually you can use it like a regular automatic gearless vehicle, because you can start in any gear.
You can start
from
in any
a
gear?
standstill. It's just that like different modes. Obviously, in first you will rocket off much faster because the gearing is so short, and in fourth it'll just be a little bit more easier. So multiple modes in a way by using the gears.
The way to look at it is third gear. The best range, I mean, with 0 to 60-ish is the lazy mode for me.
Right.
Days when I don't feel like shifting.
That's a sweet spot to be in there. That's a sweet gear to be in automatic.
Third gear, if you don't care about efficiency, you're too lazy to do riding, you can actually run it like an auto.
Right.
I mean, automatic transmission, that's fine. But knowing the thrill that exists, it's a good thing to have. I'm not sure how many people will end up using it in the first place.
Right. And Mohal, just winding down, what is the size of the market? Because clearly we've seen that EV penetration on the two-wheeler side has been driven by scooters a lot. Motorcycles really not picked up to this extent. Is it because there are not enough players, or the players are in slightly more expensive segments, or if they're in lower segments, they're not giving the value? What do you think is really the market size?
So, from a market perspective, India is about 75% motorcycles, 25-30% scooters. We last year saw about 1 million two-wheelers, electric two-wheelers being sold. For me, that's a shadow demand that there's 2 million electric motorcycles that need to be out there. Now, why aren't they out there? There's just not enough products for consumers to choose from. I mean, yes, there are products which are in different price points and different segments, but no real product for the mass market or the below sub 200cc segment, which really drives home the point of price and the performance together. Because what you end up having is, for a commuter-ish motorcycle, you might have a very high price point. And people in India don't find the value for money. I mean, we all look for value for money, and if we don't see it, we might buy it out of lack of a choice, but it's never a pleasurable purchase. It's out of distress, and that is the reason the country is still waiting. I mean, the demand is unbelievable in this country. We have enough pre-orders still on hand, starting deliveries today from Gujarat, moving towards Maharashtra, Karnataka, and then Tamil Nadu. For us, wherever we go, we are going to be setting up our showroom, service centers, and the whole gamut of the infrastructure. But We are choosing this path because it's an easier one as far as electric adoption is concerned. The other reason is we are also trying to go deep. So we are not just picking urban areas, we are even going, so not only category
Tier 2,
A,
Tier 3.
we are going category B as well. And the reason for that is when we looked at our data on pre-bookings, half of the demand was not metro or tier 1s.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
Why? Because, and we've asked people these questions. People have told us that, hey, sometimes fuel stations are just 15-20 kilometers away.
Absolutely. And here you got a petrol station at home.
Electricity is available. Electrification in this country has reached
There's a
unprecedented
5 amp
levels.
socket everywhere.
So it's not necessarily one or the other reason why
So
people
that's a
look at
very
electric.
interesting point, that one of the drivers could be that just the sheer convenience of charging at home vis-a-vis going to a petrol pump 15-20 kilometers away in remote areas.
So it's not convenience, it's the cost of driving those 15-20
Right,
kilometers
right.
if it is not
Yeah.
particularly
Correct.
on the way.
Yeah. I know they're so price sensitive, they don't mind sacrificing convenience for cost, but it doesn't work that way. So that's a pretty good insight. And Mohal, just last question, you've got about from what I understand about 40,000 pre-bookings. I'm sure we'll hope a lot will translate into firm orders and finally sales. What is your sense of, let's say, the first couple of months for you and going forward? I mean, still early days. Do you think you see the demand picking up gradually once there are more
I
bikes
think
on the
in
road?
the next 12 months, before next festive, we should have pushed out close to 50,000. We are currently supply constrained, not demand constrained.
Right.
So, and again, a country like India with the largest population on the planet, the market is out there, market is sitting, market is growing. And it's literally about how many of these can we actually produce, ship out, and with the right ecosystem and the right infrastructure going along with them. I don't want to just sell bikes with no backup for the consumer. For us, consumer is at the center of every decision we have made till date.
Right.
We want to continue doing that, and we want to ensure that even if something went wrong, the consumer does get the best service that practically can be made available.
Well, wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And having a successful launch with so many bookings.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we're going to see many more of your bikes on the road.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank you.